Srimad Bhagavatam 5.11.5 Savasanatma Vishayoparakto Guna Pravaho Vikrita Shodasatma Bibhrat Prithang Nama Bhirupa Bhedam Antarbahishtam Chapuraistanoti Saha, that Vasana, endowed with many desires, Atma, the mind, Vishaya Uparaktaha, attached to material happiness, sense gratification, Guna Pravaha, driven by the force of either Sattvagun, Rajagun or Tamagun, Vikritaha, transformed by lust and so on. Shodasha Atma, the chief of the 16 material elements, the 5 gross elements, the 10 senses, and the mind. Bibhrat, wandering, Prithak Nama Bhe, with separate names, Rupa Bhedam, assuming different forms, Antah Bahishvam, the quality of being first class or last class, Cha, and Purai, with different bodily forms, Tanoti, manifests. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: because the mind is absorbed in desires for pious and impious activities, it is naturally subjected to the transformations of lust and anger. In this way, it becomes attracted to material sense enjoyment. In other words, the mind is conducted by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. There are 11 senses and 5 material elements, and out of these 16 items, the mind is the chief. Therefore, the mind brings about birth in different types of bodies among demigods, human beings, animals, and birds. When the mind is situated in a higher or lower position, it accepts a higher or lower material body. Please repeat. Because the mind is absorbed in desires for pious and impious activities, it is naturally subjected to the transformations of lust and anger. In this way, it becomes attracted to material sense enjoyment. In other words, the mind is conducted by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. There are 11 senses and 5 material elements. And out of these 16 items, the mind is the chief. Therefore, the mind brings about birth in different types of bodies among demigods, human beings, animals, and birds. When the mind is situated in a higher or lower position, it accepts a higher or lower material body. Purport. Transmigration among the 8,400,000 species is due to the minds being polluted by certain material qualities. Due to the mind, the soul is subjected to pious and impious activities. The continuation of material existence is like the waves of material nature. In this regard, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Mayar vashe jachha bese khacha habudubu bhai. My dear brother, the spirit soul is completely under the control of Maya, and you are being carried away by its waves. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Prakritehi kriyamanani gunaih karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities which are in actuality carried out by nature. Bhagavad Gita 3:27. Material existence means being fully controlled by material nature. The mind is the center for accepting the dictations of material nature. In this way, the living entity is carried away in different types of bodies continuously, millennium after millennium. Krishna bhuli she jeev anadi bahirmukh ataiva maya tare deya samsara dukh. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhyalila 20.117. Due to the living entity's forgetfulness of Krishna, one is bound by the laws of material nature. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmelitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, Jadabharat is explaining further the summary of the entire Brahmana or wandering of the living entities in this material world. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in the 18th chapter, 61st verse, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantrarudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. It is fascinating how complex this wandering is, and yet Krishna is able to explain principles which we can understand. There are 8,400,000 species, seemingly finite, but in each and every species, each and every body is different. It's not that all the bodies are same. First of all, okay, some of them are unigender, unisex, but some of them have two sexes. So there itself there is a difference. And then there is further difference in the matter that each and every fingerprint is different. Each and every traits and bodily features, mental condition, everything is so different. There is infinity within even finite limitations. And the chain of karma, for example, we know that there is sin, there is piety, and if we commit sinful activities, we will be punished for them. Given all that, everything that is going on in the world, there is no injustice at all at the same time. So there's no injustice at all. As much as there is sin going on, there is also the reaction that is coming with it. So there's zero injustice, even in the matter of the sinful activities that are going on, and yet those who commit sinful activities are punished for those sinful activities. So this is the it appears like it's a dichotomy, but it's harmoniously being conducted. For example, in this country, there is law and there is the transgression of law. And yet, each person is getting what he is deserving. Well, because it's a human run state, there is imperfections. But each person is getting what he deserves. And even though sometimes it looks like injustice, the law of karma is above even the law of the state. For example, as we know, I've touched upon this many, many times. Abortion, for example, it's one of the it has to be the most heinous act by humans, where a helpless child is being murdered mercilessly by the own mother, or rather, may not be by the mother, but the mother hires a hitman to do it, called gynecologist. It's the most heinous thing to do. To murder someone else is horrible enough, but to hire someone to murder one's own child, who is helplessly under the protection of the mother, that has to be the most heinous activity. And yet, it goes completely under the radar of state law, and majority of the countries, they don't even punish, and it's considered perfectly okay. Now, those who are in charge of such sinful activities, they will be punished very severely. And yet, there is no injustice being committed on the part of the persons who are getting aborted in that heinous way, because they did that to others. I mean, just see what the animals are facing every day. Their hands and limbs are being torn apart, and that's exactly what happens to the baby in the womb. So they're just getting their dues. At the same time, the one who's doing it is getting implicated in doing that. So it's very, very complex, and these are the wanderings of the living entities. There is infinite complexity in this whole thing, and yet Krishna can explain it to us at the level which we can understand. When we actually try to comprehend more and more and more, it will become infinitely complex. We cannot actually comprehend. We cannot how to keep track of everything, of what one is thinking, saying, and doing. So that can only be done by the Lord. So this is called vasana. Vasana, savasana, atma. Vasana in many languages means flavor, right? Smell. But this is vasana. Why this is called vasana? Because we carry the flavor of our previous karma, previous actions and association, in fact. And we come into this world with a set of certain sense objects and a certain situation that is carved uniquely for us. Prabhupada gave this example many, many times. When the air passes over a rose garden, it carries the flavor of the rose. Air by itself has no flavor. But with what the air associates, the air will carry that flavor. So, if the air passes over the drain, it carries the flavor of the drain. If it passes over rose garden, flavor of the rose garden. So, this is explained in 13th chapter. Purushah prakristho hi bhungte prakritijan gunan karanam gunasangosya sadasad yoni janmasu. Karanam gunasangosya. Gunasanga. This is the flavor we imbibe. The living entity in material nature thus follows the way of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. So that means we are having our births according to our association of which guna. Now, this brings about a dilemma or a confusion. Now, we have always said that Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra are guna karma vibhagasha by qualities and work. One is classified as Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra and not by Janma. But if Janma itself is a product of Guna Sangha, Sadasad Yoni Janmasu, then that Guna and Karma are encoded into one's birth itself. And therefore, birth becomes the cause of one's Varna, is it not? But it's more complex than this. We tend to always, when Krishna explains these things, we tend to take the simplistic version of these things. It's easy for us to analyze what we should do and what we should not do. For that, Krishna makes it simple for us. But how he works behind the scenes is way more complex than this. So, what does it mean then by guna karma, guna sangasya sadasad yoni janmasu, and then guna karma vibhagashaha? Well, the birth itself, although one may be, suppose, taking birth in a Shudra family or even Mlecha or Chandal family, and yet he may be a better recipient of the mercy of a pure devotee than a person who is born in the Brahmana family. So how are the gunas working then? So it appears more complex than on the surface. There's more to it than meets the eye. So that means of course there is one answer which is in Chaitanya Bhagavat, where it is said that in order to, one thing we have to understand, that in order for us to be delivered from this material world, there is no other way than the mercy of Krishna and the pure devotee. Guru Krishna prasadipaya bhakti lata bij. Otherwise, even if one is in the sattva gun, sattvic, he cannot go back to Krishna. So it has to be the mercy of a pure devotee. Lord Shiva, he goes around inspecting all the people, and if somebody is having sex at a wrong time, then he will direct one of the tamasic ghostly beings to take birth in such pregnancy, to go into the womb of such a mother. And then he will come out and he will be a Varna Sankara almost. People of such product of sexual acts which are not according to religious principles, they tend to be of the tamasic nature. Why do we have terrorists and mentally deranged people more and more? It's because of this kind of unions. There's no austerity on the part of the parents, and therefore the children who come out are, even though sometimes even very talented, but highly demonic, like Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. They are extremely talented. I mean, how can you dominate the entire universe without intelligence? You have to have intelligence. I mean, Elon Musk is considered one of the greatest minds of today, and the amount of innovation he has done, and he is trying to colonize Mars. And he is far from it. He says, I hope to die on Mars. At least it will be better than dying on Earth, which is basically every other person on the Earth. So that is the most intelligent person we have today. But Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha, they were not contemplating how to land a rocket back on the Earth. No. They conquered all the planets. I mean, they have achieved the pinnacle of material success. And yet, they are classified as the biggest demons. And therefore, what was the reason? There was a wrong time in which the copulation happened. and it resulted in such a disaster. Of course, it was the will of the Lord in another way. But it is to also show us. Another example is Karna. Karna, individually, he was always wanting to be righteous. Even his alliance with Duryodhan was because of his seemingly moral obligation to Duryodhan, because he took care of him under his wings and provided for him and gave him the dignity of a Kshatriya, although he was known as a Shudra otherwise, because he was found by the, I think, washerman or fisherman or who was charioteer, sorry. So he was considered a Shudra, but then he is accepted as Kshatriya by Duryodhana, and because he gave him such dignity, he felt obliged. And usually, morally speaking, that's the right thing to do. Otherwise, it's called namak haram. Namak haram means you have taken food from him and you go against him. Which is the reason why even Bhishma Dev, although a Mahajan, could not go against Duryodhana. Even when the stripping of Draupadi happened, he could not say a word because he felt obliged to Duryodhana. This is why we should not associate with a worldly minded person, because if we become dependent on such a person, we will not be able to speak the truth when it matters. And therefore, the sannyasi is supposed to be independent he should not depend on any particular person. He may take contributions from everybody, but not from one particular person, so that he becomes dependent on that person. He becomes a pet of that person. Whatever that person says, he has to now obey. So anyway, people like this who are demonic in nature are sent inside the womb of through the semen of the father and into the womb of the mother of people who are having in the wrong time or in the wrong mindset, all these things. So it's a great science. Modern science has yet to discover all this depth of this. So sometimes though, to purify, in Chaitanya Bhagavata it is said, to purify such horrible, actually why does Lord Shiva even put these souls there in the human bodies then? If they are ghostly in character, tamasic in character, if they don't deserve. Because his idea is, at least if they are born in such human life, at least they will get a chance to associate with devotees somehow or other. Somehow or other. They will do a lot of destruction, but somehow or other they may be delivered. Like you see, Vena was born. Horrible character, slaughtering children while he was playing as a child. When he loses the game, he just slaughters the other boy. Such horrible, I mean, you cannot even imagine even today that kind of horrible act. But when he died, from his body came Prithu Maharaj. So somewhere or other, he was benefited. So the Lord, he, just like when he comes into this world, there are demons who are devotees who disguise as demons. And there are others who promote themselves to become associates of such demons, and then they also get liberated by the killing of the Lord. Just like two classes of devotees are there. One is Nitya Siddha, one is Sadhana Siddha or Kripa Siddha. They also associate with the Lord when he is, before we go back to Godhead, we associate with the Lord in this world, I mean in this material world, in one of the pastimes, and then go back to the spiritual world. So there are two, the Nitya Siddhas and so both are getting chance to associate with the Lord and serve him. Similarly, the demons are also of two kinds. One is from the Nitya Siddha who come down and play the part. The others who are like Shishupal, and this Shishupal is not the Shishupal from Jay and Vijay. The other Shishupal. In this time he got impersonal liberation, but not the original post as Jay and Vijay. So this is explained. So kalpa bheda, sometimes different kalpas there is different variations in the pastimes of the Lord, like Varaha, red Varaha and the Shweta Varaha, and so similarly there are so many differences. Many times it happens. So two classes of demons, two classes of devotees, one descending, one ascending. So the persons who are devilish in character, they are given a chance to come into human life. They will be disturbing, but maybe at one time they may become God conscious. For example, I'll give you Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, one of the boxers, right? His early life, horrible. As a boxer, he was number one in the world, but by character, unfortunate and wrong things he has done. But now he became God conscious. Somehow or other, through those difficulties that one faces, because those people, although they are of devilish character, they also will have very troublesome lives. Broken families, broken childhood. Why such people have such upbringing? It's tough. But maybe in that horrible, hopeless condition, when they fall to the rock bottom, there is nothing more to go further down. And then they will look upward. Like the hippies of America when Prabhupada went there. They were at the rock bottom. I mean, they were America, powerful country in the world, and yet they don't know what to do with their lives. In that state, they eagerly accepted what Prabhupada gave them. And that was to their benefit. They were born in Chandala families, but then they were saved by the pure devotee. So Krishna puts a devotee in such conditions sometimes in order to extract more devotion out of that person. So sometimes the parents may be very antagonistic. So that will actually propel the devotee even more towards Krishna. If it was all too comfortable, then he may not actually, like somebody came recently, one boy, inexperienced boy, but he was talking as if he had a lot of experience. I was just eavesdropping on the conversation between him and one devotee. So he said, well, in Gujarat, there is no need of Hare Kṛṣṇa temples because all are devotees anyway. It's my humble opinion, but there is no need of your ISKCON because they're already all devotees. You can preach to those people who don't know anything, but we already know. So I did not interject because I wanted to see what you want to say. Well, it was not satisfactory for the answer. But anyway, so they think like this. Oh, it is enough to be like. So there is the hare and the tortoise analogy. So there's a complacency when there is some advantage. Whereas when there's a disadvantage, one will just become, completely aggressive in that. That laulyam is required. One will become aggressive in his endeavor to become a devotee. Whereas if the parents are pushing, please become a devotee, he will just drag his feet to the temple until he listens to the parents. And once he gets a little bit independence, then you just walk away. Not to say that it's wrong on the part of the parents to actually bring him to the temple, but it depends again, the karma of the person, where he's going to go. So sometimes people in the devotees' families become not so serious, and sometimes people in the devilish families become very serious. So it's way more complicated and nuanced than just a simple. It was more straightforward in Satyuga, say Treta Yuga, where varnas were rigid and everything was orderly. There's so much disorder now. Kalau Sudra Sambhava. So actually by nature everybody is Sudra in Kali Yuga. By nature. In fact, the so-called Brahmana families are actually Rakshasas in Kali Yuga. Rakshasa kalimashritya jayante brahmayonishu. What is that? Chaitanya Bhagavat Adikhanda 16.301. Rakshasa kalimashritya jayante brahmayonishu utpanna brahmana kule badhante shrotriyan krishan. Kali Yuga's Brahmanas are like this. In Kali Yuga, demons will take birth, not just demons, Rakshasas of the previous lives, they will take birth in the families of Brahmanas. to harass those persons who are conversant with the Vedic way of life. Badhante Shrotriyan Krishan. Shrotriyan means one who actually are submissive to the disciplic succession. Uh, so they will actually antagonize the devotees. So today we have, that's why the world is actually in disorder today. It is because of Brahmanas. No one else. Is the Brahmins who are the cause. This is from Varaha Puran, spoken by Lord Shiva. You see, the scriptures forbid one from touching, speaking to, or offering respects to such Brahmanas. In one verse in the Bhagavatam, it is said we have to fall down flat in front of donkeys and asses. And here we should not pay respect to such Brahmanas. Why? Because they are representing Maya. They are not Brahmanas. Such people are not Brahmanas. So, Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. It becomes more and more prominent. The Guna and Karma become so muddled in this Kali Yuga that the birth no more is the result of pure Guna and Karma as we would understand in other yugas. And even other yugas, there have been aberrations where people of other, varnas became Brahmanas, like that Satyakam Jabala of Chandogya Upanishad. That boy, Gautam Muni, saw him in the forest. He wanted to become a Brahmana. He said, "Oh, sage, big, I want to become your disciple." He said, Gautam Muni said, "I will only take Brahmanas as my disciple. Are you Brahman?" He said, "I don't know." "Okay, is your father Brahmana?" "I don't know. I've never seen my father." "Oh, you're an orphan?" "Maybe, I don't know." "Okay, you ask your mother who your father is, whether he's a Brahmana." Then he went back and asked his mother. Mother said, "I don't know who your father is." So we can understand what kind of mother she was. So obviously, a highly respectable Brahmana wouldn't do such a thing with a woman of that character. And yet, this boy, he was not a small boy. He well understood what the implication was. He was a grown-up man, young man. And then he came back to Gautam Muni and said, "My mother doesn't know who my father is." And Gautam Muni said, "Okay, you're Brahmana, come." So the answer, it is in the Chandogya Upanishad. So what does that mean? He saw that this person is so honest that despite knowing what it means, without any, whether it's shameful or not, he was just honest about it. "My mother doesn't know who my father is." Okay, because he was so starkly honest, yes, you are a Brahmana. That's the quality of Brahmana, Arjavam. Otherwise, why would Krishna say these things in the 18th chapter? He qualifies. Not only he said Guna Karma Vibhagashaha, he actually enumerates the gunas. Shamo Damastapah Shaucham Kshantir Arjavamevacha Jnanam Vijnanam Astikyam Brahma Karma Svabhavajam. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. We have examples in Ramayana like Vibhishan, coming from Asura Kula, but is considered great devotee. We have Prahlad Maharaj, who is coming from Asura Kula, again considered a great devotee. Bali Maharaj, Asura Kula, great devotee. Vritrasura, Asura, great devotee. So there are no more Asuras then. So, therefore, we should not be muddled by the birth of such a person, but we have to take this instruction of Narad Muni, Yasyayal lakshanam proktam pumso varnabhivyanjakam yad anyatrapi drishyeta tat tenaiva vinirdishet. If one shows the symptoms of being a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, as described above, even if he has appeared in a different class, he should be accepted according to those symptoms of classification. Okay? So, we are put in complicated situations, sometimes in antagonistic families, sometimes in favorable families, and favorable for what sometimes, Sometimes it is very favorable. They are very favorable when you are following their plan of your life, what they have planned for your life. They seem very favorable. But when you suddenly switch to Krishna consciousness, they become suddenly the biggest enemies of you. The whole family will become like this. Hiranyakashipu is a classic example. And many such small Hiranyakashipus are there all over the world. But nevertheless, because Prahlad was there, Hiranyakashipu got, moksha, right? Because his son, Putra means what? Putra means Punnama Narakad Trayate iti Putra. One who delivers his father from going to hell, he is called Putra. That's why they do the Shraddha ceremony when a person passes away. So that even if by chance he is going to go to hell by some sinful activity, he will be saved as long as the pinda is being offered. So giving that person a chance to, give him some stability in the heavenly planets, in the Pitralok, so that he can become a devotee and eventually raise himself up from there. But a much better way to do this is by becoming actually a devotee. Not just once a year, every single action, if it is in service to the Lord, then the ancestors are getting liberated by such descendants. So that is the meaning of Putra. If he does not fulfill this purpose, then he is Mutra, because urine and sun come from the same part of the body. If he doesn't fulfill the this thing of Putra, then it will become Mutra, urine. So one has to be accepted on the symptoms of classification. Now, if you go back to our verse, Sa Vasana. So just like Vasana, or the flavor or the aroma of our previous life carries us to this life, so in this life also we can associate. Although we may be of one nature or influenced by a particular combination of the modes, if we associate with the right people, then we can change. That's the hope in human life. That's the hope. Human life can be very dangerous. It's a double-edged sword. Because you can either raise yourself back to Godhead or just heavenly planets, or you can just go all the way to the rock bottom of the universe in this human life. For cutting something, you need a sharp knife, but the sharp knife can also be dangerous. It can cut your hand as well. Oh, I want to be safe. I want to cut with blunt knife so that my hand doesn't cut. So that's a foolish thing to do. You have to just become adept at using the sharp knife. So in one way, as stupid as it might sound, animal life is a bit safer than human life. It is highly dangerous because their suffering is horrible, but they don't have the other side of the sharpness, which is all their actions don't result in karma. A lion kills another lion cub, he's not going to get any sin for that. He is absolved of all those reactions. He's just so they are just purging their past sinful activity which done in some remote human life many millions of years back. Because we are saying karma, right? Every action has equal and opposite. How many actions we are doing every day? Thousands. Thoughts, words, actions, all these are in the thousands or hundreds or at least tens. Suppose a meat eater, breakfast, lunch, dinner, three animals, or sometimes multiple animals, like fish curry with prawn soup. We don't know how many prawns gave their lives for that soup. So how many lives for one day's worth of activities of a human being? So just imagine the tail of karma that he is going to, accrue. How much stock? So when will he get the chance to experience all that karma? Then he has to become a prawn, he has to become a fish, he has to become all these things, chicken, mutton, everything, goat, all these things he has to become. And sometimes, as a human, he might get those reactions. Like the gulags of Russia, or the, what is that? Unit 731 of Japan. Not very well known because it's now under America, so Japan is all good now. It's all cute anime stuff because it's under the America. But actually, Japanese were one of the most ruthless, in the in the first half of the 20th century. Absolutely no mercy. Now they bow 90 degrees. But although that culture was there, yes, but somehow they were the most horrendous of all people. One of the most. So there was a Unit 731. Nobody talks about it now. Nobody knows. Everybody talks about the Holocaust. Well, people, they were tortured in such horrendous ways where what you read in Bhagavatam and Garuda Puran that happened to happen in hell, they were happening to humans in Japan. Unit 731. Prisoners of war. So one of them, I've read so many of the list of tortures and experiments they do on human beings. No anesthesia. No, what is anesthesia? So the person is just tied one of them tied all four limbs, and his stomach is slit open. He's still alive. His intestines taken out, and they cook it in front of him, and they eat it in front of him while he's still dying. So horrible, right? But such destruction or such violence is still being meted out even now. We think it's all, oh, that's ghost of the past. It's not. It's haunting us to this very day and in the much more bigger numbers. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, one of the most destructive days in the 20th century, or even probably in human history, because it was the most intentional destruction. How many people died? The upper limit estimate is 210,000 in one day. Of course, the radiation effects over time. But do you know that abortion, 200,000 abortions every single day, the exact same number as the atom bomb drop in 1945. The exact amount every single day. Every day there's a nuclear bomb being dropped in a manner most ruthless. All the hands, legs, heads, ribs, everything is just torn apart inside. Even the mothers, they don't even know what is happening inside. What is abortion? Termination of a pregnancy. They're ripping apart the baby, and that's still going on at a scale unprecedented. So there's an illusion of peace that we enjoy. There's no peace. We are in the midst of the greatest destruction, probably, and greatest. What do you say? What is the word they say? When there's a mass extinction. Yeah, 73 million humans are killed every year in what is known as abortion today, and no law condemns it. Genocide, yeah. Genocide is going. Oh, we talk about Kashmir files and what atrocities. Why such things are done, and such things are done even now. And as much as in India, all this I want to talk on these are my talking points on the abortion video. Okay. So in India, 1971, Indira Gandhi introduced the law of abortion. We may say, oh, that's Indira Gandhi, that's Congress, that's nonsense. Now it's BJP, it's all dharmic. 2020, Narendra Modi extended the upper limit of abortion from 20 weeks to 24 weeks. Can you imagine? I was shocked. I just found out a week ago. It went under the radar, no news about it even. So I just searched, what does Narendra Modi say about abortion? Oh, he actually extended from 20 to 24. So on both sides of the aisle, there is violence going on. The reason is because the intentions may be good, but the truth, they are not basing it on truth. So their ethics are based on falsity. They want to do good for the women, But because they do not understand that this is actually a child, not a potential child, it's not just a potential child, it's a child. And every single stage within the womb is another name for a child. We say an infant, a toddler, a boy, an adolescent, an adult. We're referring to the same person, different stages. It's not that when it's a zygote, when it's a embryo, when it's a fetus, it's all different stages of a potential child, and when it comes out, it's actually a child. No. It's just the same progression which happens outside the womb, it's just happening inside the womb. You just give different names, and it's all arbitrary. When it becomes a fetus? Well, roughly about 8 weeks. But that's just an arbitrary number you have given yourself. Nothing like that exists. It's a terminology you created yourself. And then they hide it, mask it under different words: fetus, embryo. What are they? If you dissect the word definition, offspring. Offspring means a child. So you cannot run away from the actual definition. You can mask it in different ways using different words and language. Now, that's why language matters. Language matters. So, anyway, these are all the different kinds of vasana we are carrying from different, lifetimes, and each is experiencing his own reactions. And in this way, we are in this complex web of life. We are all wandering. So it's a very, very padam padam yad vipadamna tesham is accentuated with these cases when we see where it's unaware. People are unaware. We think it is not so dangerous now. We have come to a point where, infant mortality has reduced to almost nil. Well, it's the exact opposite. Exact opposite. Infant mortality has risen to the highest proportions now. 61? What? Is there? Apparently, there are 61 million people who died in 2023. 61 million. But the number of abortions were about 60 million. According to WHO, 73 on an average every year. So it's more than the entire all other causes of death combined.
Also, the mother also died due to abortion, also can it be unsafe abortion?
What is a safe abortion?
I mean, mother.
There's no safe abortion at all. It's again nonsense, illusion. What is it called? Oxymoron. But oxymoron actually makes sense. When you say deafening silence, it actually makes sense. It's two contradictory words, but it makes sense. But here, it doesn't make sense. Oxymoron without sense. When it's deafening silence, the silence is too loud. It speaks volumes, such silence. That is called a deafening silence. So it has meaning. But when you say safe abortion, there's no such thing as a safe abortion. You may say, oh, one of them is safe. No. In any abortion, both are suffering. The child is immediately suffering and he dies in horrible death in the safest place in the universe for him at the time. He experiences death. And for the mother, her life is completely at risk. Not risk, guaranteed suffering for her in the future because of her present sinful activity. So there's no safe abortion. So some people fight for, unsafe abortions. 30 women die every 100,000 unsafe abortions. What about the 100,000 year? 100,000 people die, what about that? So, but as much as it is sinful for us to do it, like Prabhupada said, the cows which are being killed, except for the killing, they are not cows. What does that mean? That means when you kill them, you get the karma of killing a cow. But actually, the souls in that cow's body, they're not actually cows in the natural progressive order of evolution of the soul. They were cow killers who went back as cows to be killed, only to be killed. That's the only reason why they took birth as cows. They were not like the souls who went into lower forms and eventually coming up, bubbling up. Bubble as it rises above to the surface. It's not that. Um, so this is very complex. Huh?
Then they argue that intended to.
Well, it was your intention to do sex. The sex was intended, right? Well, that is trying to run away from the consequences of the action. They want the pleasure without the consequence. Well, that's a sin. That is dharma viruddha kama. I have analyzed this from every single and that's what I'm going to put out. Nobody can argue against this. Even rape cannot kill the child. Because the rape itself happened. First of all, the rapist should be so horribly killed publicly so that no one will ever dare again. Okay, first thing. Next thing, for the child to have taken birth in such a condition, or at least come into the womb in such a condition, is horrible. But who comes under the in that? Lord Shiva. What kind of souls? You see, Karna, he was very righteous, but his whole life he was unlucky because he was the son of an unwed mother. So this is proof to show us. Krishna wants to show us all different nuances of these things so that we understand. He creates these characters of Karna and all complicated characters, righteous on one side but siding the wrong side and getting everything wrong despite being highly talented in life. So so these complications arise, but for the woman to have faced rape and being impregnated by rape, that itself is a bad karma. That means somewhere in her past life, she must have done something which she is now getting back. We don't say, oh, she deserves it. No, everybody is suffering their karma and everybody needs to get out of it. And the only way we can get out of it is through Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there is no other way. Krishna says, Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha. Don't worry. Otherwise, there is no other way. So everybody is experiencing the reactions of their past karma, and which is why this lady got raped. But now, in order to run away from such problem, if she creates another problem for herself by murdering the child now, apart from the the reaction of the sin of rape, now she has to suffer the sin of not just murder, but killing their own child. Even Kunti, when she had this Karna, she did not kill the child. It was not of a normal marriage, right? Unwed mother. But she did not kill the child. So, can't be killed. So, it will take some time for people to digest. But if you see from what is religious principle and what is not, it will become very clearly evident what is to be done. Our course of action becomes very clear. How Krishna arranges things in the background will still remain unclear for most part, because it's not as straightforward as the principles are explained in the Vedas. To an extent, we can understand. What complexity we can accommodate in our tiny brains, Krishna explains that much. The dogs cannot understand any complexity of this, so that forget it, you just have sex and eat and die one day. That is their life. We humans have a little bit more, we can afford a little bit complexity in our lives and our thinking. So he has revealed some to us. What the demigods know, what Lord Brahma would know about the same thing, would be way more than what we know. But we don't need to know everything. We cannot know everything anyway. What we need to know is what we should do. That should be at least be very clear. We cannot have this muddled understanding of what we should do. That has to be very clear. And for that to be very clear, we need a guru. Guru, and when he guides us according to Shastra vidhanoktam karma kartum iharhasi, we have to follow that prescription. That's why it is called prescribed duty. You don't create your own duty. Prescribed by who? By Krishna or his representatives. No? So guna pravaha. So vasanatma vishayoparakto uparaktaha. Attached to material happiness, sense gratification, vishaya. Guna pravaha. The flow of the modes. Very nice words actually. Each of them is very deep. Guna pravaha. Pravaha, flow. There is always constant flow. It's not like one stagnant. Okay, this person is born in the mode of goodness. No. It's like climate and weather. Climate is more long term. Like there are seasons, there is predictability, there is a structure. Weather, day to day, there can be so many fluctuations. So similarly, we have a baseline, long term, kind of fixed mentality and mode of action, mode of lifestyle, mode of likes and dislikes. So that is our underlying influence of the modes. But daily we have mood swings, right? Like we become angry, we become, relaxed, we become focused, we become so many things. So these are all guna pravaha, the ebbs and tides of the gunas. If you see the flow of pravaha, the waves of the ocean, we will understand. It's not all waves coming nicely to the shore in a linear fashion. No, there's high complexity in the waves. And in the water, there is so much turbulence, there is this and that, so many. And sometimes there are these rogue waves. Have you seen video footages of rogue waves? In the oil rigs, you will find in the Nordic oceans. And Atlantic is full of that as well. Rogue waves are especially high, 10 times as high as the normal waves, even in the middle of the ocean. Just suddenly, like a tsunami, and just crushes everything on its path. So, all these ebbs and tides. So, guna pravaha. That's why it is called samsara. What is that? Sagara, ocean. And sometimes just moon comes. There is agitation more. Honestly, I still don't understand the tides and the moon. They say gravity, but how the moon gravity is so powerful that here but it is different because of the moon. It is because of the moon. Yeah.
They see physically, but the real moon actually controls.
I don't know. I don't have much. I've not read much into this, but I always am wondering that when they say, according to modern science, they say, oh, it's 1/6 of the gravitational force on the Earth. What? Fifth or sixth? 5 or 6? Okay. So, but if the gravity of the moon from that far is so powerful that the waves rise up, that's not powerless, and that's not too light, right? I don't know. So maybe there's more to it than meets the eye. Again, so guna pravaha, vikritah, transformed by lust, and so on. Shodasha Atma. So this chief of Shodasha Atma, these 16 material elements, 11 senses. What are the 11 senses? I think most of you know. You have heard of 10 senses. So ours is more advanced than modern science. What the modern science says, 5 senses, is only 5 jnanendriya, knowledge acquiring senses. You get information from the world, input. These are inputs. Basically, you get the taste, smell, or you get the sound, you get the sight of something. So it is information gathering senses, jnanendriya, knowledge acquiring senses. Okay, then there is karmendriya. Indriya, therefore, is a different definition from modern science. Indriya means the interface with this world. How are you interacting with this world? Whether inputting information or outputting something into this world. So there is The tongue, for example, does both input and output. Input in the matter of food, output in the matter of speech. So it is Gyanendriya and Karmendriya at the same time, different functions with the same so-called muscle that we have, but it's classified as two different senses because different functions. So the output is hands, legs, speech, genitals, and the anus. So in the beginning, I did not get it. So I was thinking, why genitals and anus are considered senses, hands are considered senses, but heart is not a sense, stomach is not a sense. Well, because those are internal systems, whereas this is an external interface with the outside world. So now, just before we, it's very late already. 15:8. शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धान् इवाश्रयात्. Gandha or vasana is the same thing. This is the example that we earlier alluded to. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another, as the air carries aromas. So the air is likened to the soul, and the aroma is likened to the modes. Accordingly, we say, oh, the air is very impure, or the air is very stuffy, or the air is very stale, or fragrant, or whatever. But actually, air has none of these qualities. Similarly, the soul has none of these qualities. A person is neither good nor bad. He is transcendental to good and bad. But why is one person good and another person bad then? What is that good and bad? That is the flavor of the modes under which he is acting. Tamasic, sattvic, or rajasic. So these determine. And therefore, Jesus said, hate the sin, not the sinner. Because the sinner is actually pure. The soul is always pure. Just like the air is always pure. So, hate the sin. His association with the modes is to be condemned. But he is not to be condemned. He has to be liberated from that. Sometimes that also includes punishment. For example, a murderer, if he is executed by the state, killed, that is actually good for him. People may say, oh, human rights, but actually, no. Because he killed, he has to pay back. If he doesn't pay back in this life, next life he will have to pay back. Like next life he will have to be murdered. So that's what he will face. Like if a person rapes in this life, next life he will have to be raped. So he has to finish, he has to be killed for such atrocity. Otherwise he will have to face the thing again. So it's actually good for him to be killed by the state. So death sentence is actually good. But they don't understand because they don't understand the soul. Even, who is this? Krishna told Arjuna, why are you hesitating to kill the Kauravas? Because they have gone the path of adharma. By killing them, you are ending their body, so the next life they can start afresh. All their reactions will be finished, and they will start afresh. So it's good for them, in fact, if they are killed in a rightful battle, dharma yuddha. So that's one of the considerations that Krishna puts forward. So air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and then quits it to take another. Now, it goes on further. You see, in the next verse. Shrotram chakshuh sparshanam cha rasanam ghranameva cha adhishthaya manaschayam vishayanupasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. This is very deep, if you want to explain, but we don't have that much time. But so everyone has particular tastes, right? Some people like Prabhupada gave the famous example of, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples when they went to Burma to preach. They were cooking in ghee, nice offerings for the Lord, and the neighbors could not take the smell. They were horrible. See, what kind of smell is this? They were like disgusted with the smell. Whereas what they were cooking was any dead thing that happens to be in the house, they will put inside one pot, and the pot has a hole, hanging pot. Pot has a hole, and then the rainwater or something mixed with the thing and then ferments, and then that juice, that slimy nonsense, they take some and then put it in their sabjis. That is their so-called ghee. So the horrible smell, rotten nonsense that they were eating, that they were very happy with. And for the devotees, that is like, oh, how can that? For us, if sometimes the smell comes from that, no, from the hawker center there, horrible smell. I think they opened the trap, oil trap. That smell is just horrendous, and people, nothing happening to them. Their face is not twitching. I don't understand. So, but when we pass by, we cannot take the smell. Different set of sense objects. Another enjoys means not only enjoy, like party kind of enjoy. Enjoy means experience. Experience. We can only experience a particular set of sense objects. For example, we cannot see ghosts, right? We cannot see ghosts. But there are some people who can see ghosts sometimes, or sometimes all the time. For some people all the time, for some people sometimes. So they are there. They have subtle bodies. But we cannot. We are ill-equipped. So there is immense complexity to the experience of this world, but we are only experiencing one slice of that complexity. One slice, like light, ultraviolet. We say ultraviolet. It's only because from our perspective it is beyond our, and infrared. But for a dog, they can hear infrared and ultrasound. What is that? They can also hear that. The dog whistles. We cannot hear. They can hear. So their range is more than us. So there are beings in the higher planets, or higher beings, the devatas, the upadevas, or even higher than them, the prajapatis, or even higher, the tapasvis of the tapoloka or brahmaloka. They can experience way more than we can. So, therefore, to conclude everything based on our experience of this world, oh, if I see it, I believe it. That is a very poor way of analyzing anything. Therefore, the best way is to accept Shabda Brahma. We have to trust the word of scripture even when it goes beyond verifiable experience. It's easy to trust it when it is verifiable. When it is not verifiable, will we still trust it? That is where actually the faith is tested. Now, psychologists will term it differently. They will say, what is that called? There is a word for that where I always confuse these terms. Where you see something, but you don't believe what you see. You agree to believe something you were told rather than something you see. What is that called? It's a logical fallacy in philosophy. Somebody please help me in the comment section. Huh?
Hearsay.
Not hearsay. When we choose to believe what we hear, although our visual experience is contrary to what we have heard, we still prefer to believe what we heard, and not believe what we see. What is that called? So psychologists may say this about, and yesterday, no, it's not one word. It's a logical fallacy. Confirmation bias it is? What is it? What is the definition of confirmation bias?
Confirmation bias is you only believe what you already have.
Yeah, even when the evidence is to the contrary. Yeah, that's like prejudice, comes from prejudice and sticking with it even in the face of evidence. So now this is a logical fallacy when in this material world. It is good to use that only in our sphere of experience. We cannot use this in matter of things where it is beyond our sensory experience or even our mental or intellectual capacity. Like, for example, a scientist, as rational as he may sound, did he choose his wife by scientific analysis? I don't think so. It was on faith. He had the faith that this woman will last. He goes to the church or whatever, have a vow of, till death do us apart. He he doesn't know. Maybe 3 years down the line, he will have a horrible divorce. Who knows? But it's a faith that, okay, she might be the lucky partner, or I might be lucky with her, whatever he may think. So that's on faith. He takes the plane on faith. He did not check. He may have a scientific meeting in another city and then he takes the plane. He's not going to check. He just trusts that they're going to check it. So we place faith on everything. Nobody is a rational creature. We cannot be. If we have to test everything by data, we will not take another step forward. We will be paralyzed. Because what if it is not solid ground? Test it first. What if it's a trap? And especially when you're a soldier, when you're on a battleground where there can be landmines and all that, you have to walk like that. Do we walk like that? I don't think a scientist as rational as even what Stephen Hawking, he cannot walk. But I mean, those who can walk and who are atheists, no respect for them. I have no respect for them. And they sound like as if they have figured out everything, or they are on the path of figuring out, or they are the furthest ahead in the race of figuring out everything. They're nowhere close. And they talk as if everything is so explainable. No, they can't. Because we just take things on faith. We take so many things for granted. This is all on faith. It's just faith. Why is this? So, such faith, we take everything for granted. On whose strength that we take things on for granted? It's because it's the Lord's will. The Lord is stabilizing it. You know what is the definition of chaos? Nowadays, I have heard a wrong definition of chaos. Chaos means, they say chaos when it is beyond their comprehension of orderliness. In their mind, orderliness means it should be like this, like this. If it is not like that, oh, that's random, that's chaos. In fact, they have a theory, the chaos theory. If you drop a ball from the top of the mountain, it goes here and there, it ends up here. It could have ended up anywhere, but it ended up one particular destination at the bottom. Depending on where it is hitting and where it is striking, and at the end it will turn differently, right? So they term it as chaos theory, that there is just things just happen, it is random. Evolution they describe like this. So chaos is when the orderliness is so orderly that they cannot fathom or they cannot contain it in their tiny heads. It's way beyond their, so it's all random. It's just entropy. Yeah, that's the that's how they explain what they cannot explain. Entropy. So, but actually, and they make it sound as if it's a principle and they have figured out something, and it is entropy. It's a, but they actually cannot explain things. They hide it under explainable words. They hide it under vocabulary so that it seems that, oh, they have a vocabulary for it. They have figured it out, but they did not. They did not figure it out. It's so vague in their heads, but they put a vocabulary to such vague thing, and now it looks definite. It's not. So enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So that's why everything can be deep, we can go so deep. And then the last one is this. Of course, there are similar verses in the Bhagavatam, I guess, I think in the 4th canto or something. Uktramantam sthitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimudha nano pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. Now, as difficult as it may sound, you see, the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So we have to train our eyes with knowledge. Just yesterday I was hearing, I like to hear these, not like, I want to investigate what they're saying. These podcast where this scientist, physicist, he was saying he went with the Schrodinger's equation of quantum physics, okay, and he took it to the extreme and extrapolated the results. Now, I don't understand quantum physics, just a little basics here and there, but he came up with this very weird ending extrapolation that his theory is that there are many worlds. And his idea, I was actually intrigued. Wow, what is many worlds? Okay. And he used terminology which might actually explain cosmology, but he meant something totally different. He said many worlds means, like, they say this parallel universes, he says that so in this world, you are doing something, you have taken this decision at this age, there's another parallel universe where at the same time you have taken all the other possible decisions, and each is a world in itself, and everybody is having all these different choices one has, and one picks a certain one and goes ahead, right? But he says we do not need to be too overthinking about it, because we may choose any one of them, and there are infinite other parallel universes where and infinite other possibilities being chosen at every single time. This is his idea of extrapolation of quantum entanglement. I mean, the most horrendous conclusion he came up to, and he used this word that if we believe or not, he said, if we take the Schrodinger's equation to its limit and trusting it beyond observable phenomena, then this is the cleanest conclusion you can come to, is what he says. Well, you are trusting something which is imperfect and extrapolating it and coming to a weird thing, which will also again have ethical implications, because then I can just do anything. There's no right and wrong, because if I'm doing right here, seemingly here, I'm doing the wrong thing in another way. So if I do wrong thing, I'm doing right thing in another parallel universe. So there's just everything is always happening. And he says all these worlds don't exist in space, but each world has its own pure speculation. It's so bad. And he thinks he's a very great scholar, and he's also given such accolades, and of course he's also criticized. But this is what happens when we don't become jnana chakshusha, when we don't take Krishna's jnana and see the world through that lens and trusting it beyond observable phenomena, as he used in his language. But no, it has to be used in Krishna's words, because this is infallible stuff. We are dealing with infallible knowledge in these scriptures, whereas they choose to place faith in theories which cannot explain themselves. Quantum mechanics is apparently the science of everything, but they cannot explain what is gravity. In relativity, it is bending of space-time, but in quantum physics, you cannot explain gravity. You can maybe explain it in a cosmic scale, but cannot explain it in the individual scale. How come the individual atoms that make up the universe have a different property from the universe? From where is it coming then? So they cannot explain. So when they come into these paradoxes, when it doesn't make sense anymore, it makes only sense in a limited sphere of experience. So how can we trust that and extrapolate it to the purest nonsense? Purest version of that nonsense. So we cannot. But that same trust we should have in Krishna's words. That's what Prabhupada demonstrated. Today, when we say TV, it is easy to understand. TV, yeah, you can see. But if you say that Sanjaya saw what happening in the battlefield, he was narrating it. This is all mythology. Oh, in the baby, the 10th day, the 15th day, first month, this is happening. This is all mythology. Until ultrasound came about. And now, yes, it is fact. And the, what is that? Measurement of the planets and the yeah, astronomy is already done. Oh, that's all. Now they say astrology is something. But they have just not caught up with that science yet. So why ours is so advanced? Because we just accept what Krishna says. We just accept what Krishna says. And then on that basis, we can come up to fantastic conclusions which are far above what the modern scientist is dealing with. Yeah. We have to show them this. We just cannot be happy with, we are the smartest guys in the universe. No. we have to have, when it is Trinada Pisinichena, you have to have humility. Not only, we have to also have intellectual humility, that okay, we are completely, I'm not capable of finding anything. But humility also means to accept Krishna's version of it. Today scientists talk about intellectual humility, saying that we should never think that we know it all. We should always be in the explorative mindset, so that we actually, otherwise we may drive past or walk past an epiphany, because we have been so prejudiced, not giving a chance to such a thing. That's what they term as intellectual humility. No, intellectual humility means, yes, we should not think that we know it all, but we should also accept that the Lord actually knows it all. And when He tells us, we have to accept it. That is actual humility. To pose as if I'm intellectually humble, but I don't accept the version of the Supreme, that is pride. That is showing that I'm just, that's virtue signaling only. But actually inside there is what is going on. I have the pride that I am the most humble. And I am exploring it to the furthest frontiers that are possible with human mind. Although they say, yes, I am standing on the shoulders of giants, and because of past advances in science, now I am able to do the further exploration after this. But at the same time, it is me who is doing this, and I'm here at this point in the race. So this is all manoratha. This is complete pride, hubris, that one thinks that I can do it all, or I can explore it, or I can have a theory for everything. This is all pride. Humility means accept. That's why Prabhupada was once asked, what is humility? Humility means, Prabhupada said, to have the complete faith that Krishna will protect us. How is that the definition of humility? You should really contemplate on it to understand. Yes, that is the real definition of humility. Why? Because at every step we always think, I can do it, or I trust everything other than Krishna. Krishna is always the last resort. Krishna, if you're really there, please hear my prayer. That is like the last resort kind of thing. But I will do everything first, thinking that this can save me, that can save me, that can save me. Prabhupada said, humility is when I understand that Krishna and only Krishna and nothing else can save me. Then that's when actually surrender will come. Goptritve Varanam Tatha, accepting the Krishna as our guardian and master. That is where it comes. That is actual humility. And it has to be on every level, intellectual humility, mental humility, physical humility, everything. So,
extrapolation is allowed in Vedic. Extrapolation. Is allowed.
I don't understand. What is that?
That is also allowed in Vedic.
Where?
Krishna said yesterday I was reading 11:10:40.
11:10?
14.
11:10:40.
14 to 61.
I have thus explained to you perfect knowledge. There are philosophers, however, who challenge my conclusion. They state that the natural position of the living entity is to engage in fruitive activities, and they see him as the enjoyer of the happiness and unhappiness that accrue from his own work. According to this materialistic philosophy, which is Karma Mimamsa, the world, time, the revealed scriptures, and the self are all variegated and eternal, existing as a perpetual flow of transformations. Knowledge, moreover, cannot be one or eternal because it arises from the different and changing forms of objects. Thus, knowledge itself is always subject to change. Even if you accept such a philosophy, my dear Uddhava, there will still be perpetual birth, death, old age, and disease, since all living entities must accept a material body subject to the influence of time. No, he's just describing the nature of rebellious souls, how they do not accept me and my philosophy. But it's not that it's allowed, it's just stating the fact that how people are. That there are people who challenge my authority. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, he qualifies them as mudha, namam dushkritana mudha prapadyante, naradhama. So he classifies them and he names them accordingly. Yeah. So he gives everything, material and spiritual, everything he gives. There will be people who will analyze differently according to their perspective. That does not mean it is actually an accepted. I mean, that's why Krishna says, although they may talk all these things, at the end they're going to suffer birth, death, old age, and disease. That means it's not going to save them from birth, death, old age, and disease. All these postulations. The only way you can escape this is by becoming my devotee. So all other philosophies will fall short at this point. They will not save you. That's why Shankaracharya said, Bhaj Govindam, Govindam Bhaj Mudhamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karane. These speculations won't save you at the time of death.
They try to ponder upon the verses and stir up the deeper meaning about them present for our assimilation, for our consumption. That is still an extension of the imagination, although it's connected with the mood and different.
No, it's not imagination. Acharyas don't work on that principle. It is realization. Yeah. So when Baladev Vidyabhushan wrote the Vedanta Sutra Bhashya, it is called Govinda Bhashya because Govinda dictated and he wrote it. It is directly dictated by the Lord. Yeah. They are right. That's why Arshavajna Vakya Nahi Dosha Eshab Bhram Pramad Vipralipsa Karana Pata 286. So they don't extrapolate. Like how Prabhupada showed us, even when in the face of contradictory evidence from modern science, he always stuck by the statements of the Vedas. Even though you cannot prove it currently, he still stuck by it. Like he says, moon is one of the stars, sun is not one of the stars. Now modern science does not accept that. But we will just stick with that. Because Krishna says so. So, maybe there will come a time where they will realize that actually, yeah, this was the correct thing. 2 billion years later, maybe. Just like 2 billion years after Kapil Dev spoke about the womb, child in the womb, now they found this ultrasound. So 2 billion years later, maybe they will find out. Maybe. But until then, why we should conform to their idea of what is right or wrong? So they are always informed by Krishna. So when Krishna speaks these things, the acharyas give commentary and give deeper understanding. The only reason that happens is because Krishna wants to give them that credit. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes this actually. Why sometimes hidden things are discovered by acharyas. Sometimes there may be verses, sometimes there may be meaning of the verses. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it's because Krishna has left his Vedic literature and went, but then he would want to give credit to his devotees to have found something. And therefore he leaves it for the devotees to unearth that meaning or that realization of that same words. Krishna means it at all levels. But who, like that word, 118.23, right? Aham hi prishtoryamano bhavadbhir achaksha atma vagamotra yavan nabha patantyatma samam patatrinas tatha samam vishnu gatim vipaschitah. O rishis who are as powerfully pure as the sun, I shall try to describe to you the transcendental pastimes of Vishnu as far as my knowledge allows. As the birds fly in the sky as far as their capacity allows, so do the learned devotees describe the Lord as far as their realization allows. The sky is infinite, but the height of the bird is depends on its capacity. So similarly, when Krishna says something, he means it at all the levels of realization. But how much we're advanced, that much we can understand, comprehend. That's why it is always ever fresh. Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, always newer and newer. Why it is newer and newer? Because it is unfathomable depths or unfathomable heights, whichever. And our capacity only rises, and we will experience more and newer experience of the same text. But that is already there in the text. It's just that we have not discovered. So, yeah, 3636. I wanted to show that because time was against. तथापि कीर्तयाम्यंग यथामति यथा श्रुतं कीर्तिं हरेः स्वां सत्कर्तुं गिरमन्याभिधासतिम्. In spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear from the spiritual master and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech. For otherwise, my power of speaking would remain unchaste. So whatever I could assimilate in my realization, I am speaking. All right. So I think any questions or comments? I mean, ask related questions, sir. Don't ask me unrelated questions. Okay. Okay. One last satsangati. Just like that word flavor of the air, right? Vayurgandhan. There is another example of this. I wanted to show, but I forgot. Yasya yat sangate pumso manivatsyat satat gunah swakuladhye tato dhiman swayuthanyeva samshriyat. Yeah. As the qualities of a nearby object are reflected in a crystal, one similarly takes on the qualities of a person with whom he associates. And not only a person, with anything, with the gunas that he associates, he develops the color. Crystal, when it is put near the blue, it will also appear blue. So like that, with whom he associates. Therefore, in order to increase one's devotional sentiment in his own line, a wise person should take shelter of those who have the same temperament. So we should associate with devotees. So that is again connected to vasana. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you.